All right. Welcome to the monthly meeting of Winnebago County Fatherhood Coalition. I am Miles Lockett, the coalition coordinator. Today's session is especially meaningful. We're sharing finding from researchers conducted with Winnebago County dads and male caregivers. Our goal is to understand how they see their roles, what supports that they need, and what they expect from community providers and from this coalition. The voices guides our works and essentials that we hear from clearly. At the end of today's presentation, you'll receive two documents, a full research report, one-page summary of the key findings. Today, my Brightpoint colleagues will be facilitating today's meeting with me, Earl Klopman and Fania Mojica. I'll now turn it over to Earl.
Our Winnebago County Fatherhood Coalition began 7 years ago, and our mission has always been to unite the county around the importance of fatherhood. We believe that engaged fathers have great outcomes for their children, families, and our community. So we work hard to ensure that fathers in our community have the supports and the resources that they need to be effective in their fathering role. So together as a coalition, we identify those supports, we promote them, and we even work to create new ones where gaps exist. Our coalition is comprised of a variety of diverse individuals, professionals, volunteers, moms and dads, regardless of race, gender, or background. Everyone who is interested in promoting fatherhood is welcome at our table. Our coalition meets 6 times per year. We have 3 fatherhood coalitions in Illinois. We have one in Chicago, and we also have one in Central Illinois. All of our coalitions are based on research. We know we have to listen to the voices of fathers, and we have to base all of our efforts on solid research. So our work is grounded in strong community-informed research. It's been said that sometimes research can take up to 17 years to get into practice, and we're trying to speed that up so that we can put what we learn into practice. And at the end of today's presentation, you'll hear a next step that you could take regarding this data. I also want to give special thanks to the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services for funding our coalition work and for making this research possible. Now I'm going to turn it over to Fania to introduce our presenter.
Thank you, Earl. Ella Henry serves as the research project coordinator at Brightpoint, where she plays a key role in in elevating fathers' voices through data-driven insight. Having participated in multiple focus groups and conducted the full transcript analysis, Ella brings both firsthand experience and analytical depth. She will walk us through the major themes that emerged and share the report developed for the coalition. Ella?
All right, hello. Thank you so much for that introduction. I was just getting my screen all shared. You should be looking at this title slide. And so yeah, today we are going to be going over our research findings. So the presentation is titled Fatherhood Through Their Eyes, What Winnebago County Dads Want You to Know. And just a bit of our agenda. We're going to start off going over what we did in this research, what we found through this research, and most importantly, what it means to the Winnebago County Fatherhood Coalition. And we'll tie it up with a community comparison. As Earl mentioned, we do have a few other fatherhood coalitions as well as support groups, so we bring that community comparison in through that. And so starting off with what we did, Brightpoint conducted 3 focus groups with a total of 34 dads in Winnebago County during the winter of 2023 and carrying into the spring of 2024. And the participants were recruited mainly from local providers and some of our Brightpoint Fatherhood support groups. And these focus groups were structured 90-minute discussions. And so by structured, they each followed the same script of pre-planned questions because we really wanted to get to the bottom of fatherhood involvement and what that looks like. And so the questions were selected to understand how fathers define fatherhood, what motivates them to be involved in their children's lives, and how their experiences in the past as children and then currently as adults living in Winnebago County have influenced their experiences as fathers. And then we had a few more questions, and most relevant to the community in this coalition, fathers were also asked what factors within their lives in the community context contribute to their involvement and what fatherhood coalitions and other community providers could better do to support these fathers. So we wrapped all of our focus groups up with some questions related to support. And so all of these conversations were recorded and transcribed to have them analyzed. And through the analysis, we pulled themes and some reports and some quotes to create reports, one pagers and presentations like this, and like one we had done in October with the West Side Fatherhood Coalition. And so all of these were part of our greater fatherhood research and policy work that we're doing that is really centered on amplifying dad's spoken word and experiences. And so just to get into a few of our demographics, before the 3 focus groups, they were started off with a quick survey to get some demographic information. And so these are all approximate self-reported survey results, with the majority of the participants, about 64% were Black dads, and then we had about 20% white dads, and the average age was 44 years old with a range of about 20 to 65 years old. So we also had some grandparents represented in this who were providing care. And then we also had dads who had about 2 children on average and a median self-reported income of about $40,000. And so moving into the results, what we found. So this was a big one that was really across all focus groups and was prevalent within many different question styles. It was popping up in many different ways throughout the conversation, is that fathers really grapple with expectations that their primary role in parenting is to be a financial provider. And so through the discussions and father sentiments, we found that this really stems just from parents and society believing that father's primary responsibility is to provide for their family financially, while a mother's primary responsibility is to be there for the family and providing emotional support. And so these really strict gender roles create high levels of stress. And this stress can be particularly felt among low-income fathers who may feel they're not able to meet their financial expectations and therefore are not really fulfilling in their mind their role as a dad, as they describe themselves as that being their primary responsibility. And so fathers are faced with this pressure and constraints within this role, and at times are unable to see their children or feel they may be unable to see their children because of their economic situation. Some examples that came up with this were like the holidays and not being able to provide Christmas presents and maybe feeling internally that they cannot attend any sort of Christmas festivity because they are not able to provide any presents. And so in Winnebago County specifically, the dads really had the discussion about the impact of their childhood and their experiences on their parenting philosophy, as many of these dads talked about their father in their past working multiple jobs and not offering any emotional support while they grew up. And so this really shaped their vision of what an involved father looks like. And so this theme really carried into their adult life, and due to fathers' commitments to provide financially, many of them identified a barrier being time and just feeling as though they're not able to spend that quality time because of long and irregular work schedules. And then despite working really hard to sustain their family financially, many fathers still find that they are unable to take their children on outings and engage in exciting activities for bonding, such as the arcade. That was an activity that one dad had listed that stuck out to me. And they really just shared that many of these community activities that they would like to do with their kid and like to take a step out of the just financial provider role and kind of do some of these more engaging activities, they find tricky because of the costs. And so here's a quote that really speaks to the idea of childhood experiences influencing parenting. My dad took care of us financially, but that is it. He gave us everything he wanted. He was just never there. He didn't know how to be a father. I did the same. And then we move on to our next major finding, which was that fathers find joy and value in spending time with their children and connecting with them emotionally. So, although many of these dads talked about these financial burdens and constraints, they also really did not feel confined to that being their only role. And they've gone through this growth in recognizing that there is much more to being a dad. And this was felt in all focus groups as well. And just really, fathers shared that throughout their journey as a dad, they had come to these lessons, and some noting that maybe they realized later than they would have liked, but still having that journey was important to them. And so in these conversations, dad spoke to the question of what does it mean to provide emotionally for their children? And the highlights were really spending quality time, having open communication, and staying consistent with their involvement. Having that consistency is key. And so with that, fathers view themselves as role models for their children, but all are also learning lessons from their children every day. And that speaks to having those open conversations, like say after school, asking what they're learning. And fathers really found value in learning what's going on in their education and just taking lessons from that. And they found great value in this two-way stream of learning and growing, just getting that look into their education. And fathers also highly value quality time with their children, as I had mentioned. And just to give a few examples of how this quality time may take form, because there were a lot of different ways that were discussed, but some of the main ones included teaching a practical skill like fixing up things around the house, washing the car, working on the lawn, stuff like that. Fathers found value in playing sports and just really having those conversations. And lastly, this was very evident in all of these conversations, is that fathers expressed a very deep love for their children and pride in being a dad. And I think this is a great quote that really speaks to that love and deep pride, as well as just being there for the big moments. So I've seen the first steps, first words, and I wouldn't give that up for anything in the world. And it's just an amazing thing to see, watching them grow, watching them smile, watching them want to be with you every day. And then we also had a lot of discussions surrounding barriers and what are the major barriers that may hinder or not be as supportive in helping dads be fully involved as dads. And so fathers face many barriers, and the biggest ones we identified were in navigating co-parenting relationships as well as the legal system. And so dads really talked about how the relationship with their co-parent can really make or break their involvement with their children. And many fathers said it's important for two parents to operate on the same team, but they also noted that this can also be the largest barrier they face in their involvement, is often the co-parenting relationship. So while recognizing that it's so important, it still can present many challenges for many of the dads in these focus groups. And so some of the ways that they discussed this showing up was differing parenting styles, how this can really make some challenges in reaching agreements in parenting decisions, and how two clashing philosophies cannot be supportive in continuing a strong co-parenting relationship, as well as distance. That was another one that was mentioned a few times. If the co-parent was to be living in a different city or even state, this can present a pretty large logistical barrier to involvement. But it's also important to note that with these instances, many of the dads were still committed to taking the trips, or mentioned how they would like to or are taking trips to see their children. So despite this logistical barrier, there are still efforts to overcome it. And then as part of the legal discussion, that was really mainly had in one focus group, but within that one focus group, multiple dads shared similar experiences. So I do think it is worth noting that many dads do experience these challenges within the legal system, and um, going through like custody agreements and everything like that. And some fathers even had custody of their children, but despite that, schools or law enforcement they found where it would side with the mother in instances or disputes, like having a mom pick up from school, even though the dad is the one with custody and should be the one picking up. But they felt that the school just was oftentimes automatically assuming that the mother was the primary caregiver. And so this created some conflict and just led to dads having this discussion that many systems feel more supportive towards their co-parents or mothers. One example was that one father cited spending $86,000 in legal fees to try and work through custody and parenting agreements, while the mother of his child was able to utilize free legal services. And so this was just an example that many dads agreed with, and the idea that they felt unequal treatment within the legal system, and that can lead to decreased time spent with their children due to formal systems and agreements that may be reached. And so we have this quote about co-parenting. So a mother and a father don't have to be together, but it got to be an open respect between you for the sake of the children. Men get lonely when they know their kids are not there. So that was another thing that this group specifically talked about, just that loneliness and isolation of knowing that they are really constrained from seeing their children because of formal agreements or anything along that matter, and how really lonely that can be for them. And so within these barriers and things that may come up that could limit their involvement, fathers really strive for self-improvement and a supportive community that can help increase their fatherhood involvement. So we've heard fathers talk about their resiliency through identifying some of the ways that they know that they need to improve and really actively engage in this self-development to make these improvements that they know could increase their involvement. And some of these areas include working on behaviors or getting support for their addictions. And some of the fathers talked about witnessing abuse or addiction in their own childhood and said that they were dedicated to breaking these generational cycles and really were committed to this self-work that they knew they needed to go on. And so along with that, many fathers seek a supportive community, but identified the need for improvements within the community. Many fathers noted that there were challenges in accessing resources. However, there was still a subgroup of dads who found that they were able to navigate the resource landscape and kind of offered guidance for some other dads in the group who faced challenges with it. And so there was a small group of fathers who found supportive relationships with their co-parents and also had some parenting help from their own parents. The public library was noted as a resource for engaging family activities, but it was mainly followed up with the idea that supportive resources may be available, but they are not common knowledge. And so two groups also, I found worth noting, was that two groups had identified at this time that the community was promoting the wrong type of events that could really help bolster community involvement and engagement, especially with families. In their minds, they had pointed out that all over town there were flyers promoting a gun show and also sometimes car shows, and they found that these events were a little less family centric for what their family was interested in, and they had just wished that the same community emphasis and advertisement was focused on these more family centric events. So it really got down to promoting more father friendly, family friendly types of activities that they would feel comfortable and wanting to take their children to. And so this quote more speaks to the first half of this theme of the self-growth and identifying areas of improvement. So this dad shared that he's working on being patient. I lose my patience sometimes, but I notice that, so I keep my cool, I slow down. I think this is a great short and sweet quote that really shows the recognition of something that he would like to work on and how he is working through it. And then our last major finding, was that fathers want their feelings recognized and to have more spaces for men to discuss their emotions more freely. And so this was, again, all across the boards in all three focus groups. The dads really had this open discussion about the mental challenges that they face as being a man and a father. And there was this group consensus about the ways in which they suppress their emotions. And sometimes they feel they are not prioritizing their mental health and just kind of pushing through it and but not working through it. And so fathers found that sometimes also their emotions feel dismissed by their co-parents or formal systems. And there is just this lack of resources that are specific to men, and it can cause dads to feel even more isolated from services that could support them if they're not feeling perhaps that welcoming feeling. These dads also talked about how it can be really hard for them to ask for help. So even if there are these resources available, the fathers may not be aware of their existence, and they're not quite sure how to go about asking their peers, family professionals, people like that, on how to access these resources. Another thing of note was that fathers had talked about how there is a need sometimes to travel to different counties for healthcare needs and other resources. This was for themselves and their children, and how that can also just be hard, especially if you're not sure where they are and not aware that you even have to travel to a different county. That can create some more layers of stress that and emotions that may already be feeling. So feeling those may be exacerbated. And so, yes, the dads really just talked about this high need for men and fathers to come together to encourage each other in working through challenges that arise in fatherhood and life. Fathers seek recognition and validation of their emotions, and fathers feel constrained in many ways to these gender stereotypes, and that there are not enough resources specific for men, and resources that too can maybe help break down these gender stereotypes and help them really feel their emotions and work through them. And so another similar to the last theme, but how the community could really just benefit from a stronger promotion of activities and resources, as some of these dads talked about how they feel they only appear after a crisis. And so this can create high levels of stress and potentially lead to an even higher need for this mental health support that they discussed. All right, and this is our final quote. It's hard being a man. We were raised not to cry, not to show our feelings. I need to know somebody else is going through these struggles and it ain't just me. So this is just a really good example of the benefit of peer support and how important that can be when you're going through something and you feel so alone. All right, and then we have what it means. So what does this all mean to you all as the Winnebago County Coalition? So fathers in Winnebago County are seeking recognition for the challenges they face and for their role in their children's lives. So really just that recognition that they're beyond the financial provider. And so the specific recommendations derived from the fathers include more mental health resources and peer support groups for fathers are needed. I would say this was the biggest one discussed throughout all three groups. Fathers really just were requesting a wide recognition that men's mental health matters and for the challenges that they face in their role as a father. And so a strong method to help men share their emotions in a safe space is hosting more support groups for fathers. And then we also had classes and mentorship opportunities for new dads. This can help alleviate some of the stress associated with the early stages of parenting and really get that involvement in right from the start. Can also really increase to longer lifespan benefits. And so mentorship programs would help provide fathers with increased supportive one-on-one relationships, specifically with other men who may know what they are going through at the time. And then moving on to some more formal resources being increased community events, specifically more based on play and having that stronger promotion of these events as well. And so some common activities that were brought up include block parties, team sports geared towards fathers and their kids, or something like movie nights in the park. They had a lot of great ideas. Those were just some. And then we have more co-parenting programs that are designed to mediate and support fathers and co-parents in navigating through relationships and parenting challenges that may arise, as well as creating more equitable visitation schedules so dads can maybe not feel quite as isolated and lonely and really missing and longing for their kids, since that did come up so much, as well as just having resources to help acquire equitable legal support. And then lastly, we had a community resource list and or databases. So that can really provide fathers and families with a clear picture of the resource landscape available to them in Winnebago County. As many of them noted that there may be the resources or activities going on, they just really are not aware of them. So I think having and some dads mentioned this database idea, just having a central location or area where you can really see what is going on in the community could help with some of that feeling of not knowing what is out there. And then last but not least, we have our community comparison. So this comparison is with Englewood and the west side of Chicago. And so as Earl mentioned in the beginning of this, Bright Point offers fatherhood services throughout the state. And with this, we hosted some similar focus groups in two neighborhoods in Chicago, being Englewood and the west side. And so that is where I'm pulling this comparison from, because we asked all these areas of service about the same questions to gauge their involvement as part of a larger community analysis. And so really overall, the findings were quite similar and pointing to dads understanding that their role as a father and a parent is not just that of a financial provider. They all emphasize the importance of communicating with their kids and being a strong emotional support for them. But they did also have that recognition with them that they do have a role in providing financially, but they really went beyond that with the other half. And also, all dads shared the need for more father and men specific resources and the need for mental health programming, and really just how powerful even just the one focus group where all dads were together. And just about every focus group we hosted, there was just a really strong togetherness and feeling of group discussion within the dads. And a lot of them noted that this made them feel a lot better and that they felt less alone. And so this led every group to saying that we need more support groups for dads, more groups like this, stuff like that. And then with that, though, there were some differences. So just a few Winnebago dads experienced constraints in their role as a man at a higher rate. So we were coding for like the male role, meaning they spoke more to the ways in which they suppress their emotions and also the felt need and kind of that stress associated with feeling the need to provide financially all the time. There was also a greater mention to the role that their childhood had on this perception. A lot of the dads in Winnebago County talked about how they had a dad involved, but the dad was really just busy working. So that was a difference within communities, those childhood experiences, as well as Winnebago County dads also spoke to the needs of their community at a slightly higher rate. So while the conversation was had within all groups about the needs, there was a bit more discussion in Winnebago County about some of the things like the need to travel for affordable and available resources, as well as the little knowledge about what is out there. Like there was a lot of discussion surrounding that. So those were the two standouts. And so, yes, I just said quite a lot. So any questions or any moments you want to highlight or anything that really struck out to you? Can open up the floor.
excuse me, this is Lynn Riley from Child and Family Connections. I was curious if you could share any details on, the dads who were saying that they weren't interested in the types of events, the gun and the car shows. I certainly wouldn't want to take my kid to a gun event, but that's a personal thing. But I'm curious as to where they were finding out that these things even existed. Because when we're sharing, pardon me, information about early intervention or even other resources or activities that we know of, we want to make sure that we're hitting the places that the dads are seeing it.
Right.
Because I feel we do a great job of promoting like the Week of the Young Child event. But that doesn't mean the dads are seeing it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I it sounded as though they were seeing these more around the city, like in Rockford. This was where they were discussing this was happening on like telephone poles, and like that more like flyer style was effective in that, and that's how they were able to see that promotion that seemed to be like on poles.
I'm sorry. This is TC from Fatherhood United. Thanks for sharing and everything, Ella. So my question is, so we have an event specifically coming up called Dinner with Dad, and we have a premier restaurant that's agreed to give us a good price point to be able to feed families as long as they're bringing a dad, right, with them. And so they have to RSVP, and we're communicating this through flyers, posters, Facebook, and face to face at the community centers where they're picking up their kids. But we also see a gap when it comes to communication of our events and our programming and the necessary resources to men specifically. One of the reasons being, I feel, is that there's a lot of so when you have a separate family home, typically speaking, there's already programs in place for children, right? So the child goes to different services. There's doctor appointments. There's so many different things that you're able to communicate with the caregiver, and most times that's a mom. And so, especially if it's a separate family. So, with that being said, there's not a lot of touch points for men with human services, right?
Hmm.
There's a couple reasons for that. One is like systemic, and then the other one is the fact that, from what we've seen shared by men, is that men, typically speaking, don't like to ask for help the same. It's not culturally, it's not embedded culture. So what we're trying to do, what I'd like to ask you is like, do you have any um, suggestions on how we can, because some of the things that you said are available. For instance, in Rockford, you said mentorship and different programming, and you know,
Hmm.
Fatherhood United. We do have those things in place, but we still feel like men don't know how to get in contact with us to do that. And so, what suggestions do you have or that you've seen at work to be able to? And everyone on the call can chime in on this question as well. What suggestions do you have? We have, for instance, 5 locations. We're feeding up to 50 people per location, one a week, all across Rockford. If you have an idea of how we can make sure we put 50 people in there together, 50 men, 50 men and their kids total, please chime in.
Casey, I have a question. Are these events, they're open to the whole family? So, if it's mom, dad, and kids or co-parenting situation, is it just dads and children, or is it open to the whole family?
There we
DC,
go.
you're on.
Can you see me now? Yep. So as long as a dad is present, we're allowing the family to come, right? So we're not turning anyone away. Ideally, we would love to see is dinner with dad, right?
Mhm.
It's called Power Full, like FULL, like you're full. Dinner with dad. And we have one speaker per location, just giving a motivational message. We're going to talk a little bit about our program for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And then we'd love to see other organizations that are on this call that interact with dads and support fathers to email me or call me. I'll give you my number and my email right now. Email me or call me after this call. We would love to get you involved because we're spending literally thousands of dollars to do this event over the next 4 weeks. We want to make it as successful as possible, right? And we don't do everything, right? Like for instance, there's some young people that are saying that they don't have a dad. Their dad is dead. He passed away. Like that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when we don't have the resources to then in turn mentor that young man or young woman. And so, or young child. So what we like to do is if you have a mentorship program that you know of, or you operate in a mentorship program right now, we need you to come, right? Because we will have some women that are showing up saying, hey, my child's dad is not present, not because he doesn't choose to be present, but because he cannot be present, whether he's incarcerated or he's passed away. So so we definitely want you to link up with us after the call. We would love to plan on you coming to the event. Maybe we can give you some time to speak, but yeah, we have the platform over the next month. We'd love to be more engaged with everyone.
Is this just limited TC to a month? Is it ongoing throughout the year?
We're going to do it infrequently, Earl.
Okay.
But right now we're using this as a recruitment tool to fill our program. And so, people love food. It's a trap.
Mhm.
It's a trap. I'm letting you know that ahead of time. So people love food. So we spend a lot on the food because we believe that, people will definitely come and sit down and give us an audience for a little while they're eating. And then our hope is that those same people understand our mission, what we're going and what we can offer them. And so they start to be further engaged with the program. The program that we're running is 7 weeks. We're using the Nurturing Fathers curriculum, and we have our own curriculum also that we layered on top of that talks to things like domestic violence. Again, we welcome the ideas. If you have mailing lists, if you already operate with dads, please, I'm gonna actually put my information in the chat right now, and do me a favor and please send me an email so we can actually talk, or I can at least give you our event information, our flyers and our marketing, so you can help promote it.
Yeah, our coalition certainly exists to promote events like yours. We definitely will do that. Do you have like a flyer or a piece of information? We have countywide distribution lists that we could help promote this as well if we had some flyer or document that we could use that would give more
Or I'll
information.
email it to you as soon as we have the call.
Okay. All right. I think Dan also had a question in the chat. Did you see that, Ella?
Yes, I just saw that. And I was thinking about it, and yeah, unfortunately, there was not a price that was named. I think it was more implied, like the need to have just more free events, like a free movie night in the park or something like that, where you bring your own blanket and activities such as that, I believe was what was being discussed.
Sure, that makes perfect sense, Ella, and that's kind of the sense I've gotten too. And I just, sometimes we'll pass things along that say $5 or $10, and it's difficult because we don't want that to feel like there's a cost. So now it's inaccessible totally,
Mhm.
and where that balance ends up being to share. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Bell, could you please share your email as well in the chat?
Also the flyer.
Yes.
And I think I already shared the email in there.
Yep.
So you
Oh,
should be
you
able to.
did. You did. Yes, you did. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. No problem.
Sorry, I was muted, but I also just wanted to share my contact information with this group in case anybody has any other questions that may come up about this research. And then we also we'll be sharing the PDF report of these findings, as well as a one-pager that summarizes them if you're interested in that. And you'll also be getting a link to our fatherhood website at Brightpoint, where you can see some of the other products that have come out of our fatherhood research series.
Are there any final questions people have?
There is one from Gary Jonkeys that I think this will be answered by Ella, but I believe it's in the PDF I'll be sending out after the meeting. He asked for the slides because of all the information, but all this information is included in the PDF packet I have to send out, correct, Ella?
Yep, the report is about 4 or 5 pages, and it goes over basically everything I just said.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Hi, this is Avery Dillon with the City of Rockford and the Community Healing Center. I was wondering, you had mentioned the public library as an access. Was that specifically the Winnebago, or was that in for the entire state that the public library was mentioned as a place to go for resources?
I think it was specific to Winnebago because they were talking about some activities that they had taken their child to do. So I believe it was a more local activity.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Brightpoint has a